Good morning and good afternoon and good evening, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are in the world. Welcome back to the Caring Economy with me, Toby Usnik. Today, my guest is Ryan Black. He is the Chief Executive Officer of SAMBAZON, which is an acronym for Sustainable Management of the Brazilian Amazon. It's a company which he co-founded in 2000 with his brother Jeremy and a friend Edmund Skanda Nichols. SAMBAZON is the industry leader and pioneer in Açai, and the first brand to bring the Brazilian superfruit from the Amazon to the United States. After experiencing his first acai bowl on a surf trip in Brazil, he saw an opportunity to create and share delicious and nutritious acai-based products with people across the world while pioneering a socially and environmentally conscious business model. And we're going to talk about that today. So, Ryan Black, welcome to the Caring Economy.
Thank you so much, Toby. Looking forward to our discussion.
You've got so many aspects in your bio that I want to trickle through today versus just reading it out at this top. But have you give us like a digest of Ryan Black's life, where he grew up, how he found his path, maybe some pivots?
I grew up as a young kid here in Southern California, Orange County. Older brother Jeremy, who you mentioned, and kind of single mom, and we moved around a little bit. Ended up from the beach moving to Arizona. I really kind of fell in love with, not just say skateboarding, but also in football. It was something that I excelled in. And I think the father figure of the football coaches really sort of drew me in, and I loved the discipline of the game. And so I really focused on that for a while. I also, in fifth grade at the elementary school, we did you study U.S. history in fifth grade, at least you did during this time. And we did the patriotic pageant where you had, people playing George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and different people in history. Well, I played Martin Luther King Jr. and I gave the I Have a Dream speech. And I don't know why, but, it really touched me, and so it's kind of this, I think it is relevant for my story, is that from a very young age, I felt this sort of pull to social justice. I don't know, fighting for the underdog, fighting for the poor man, fighting for truth and right and things like that. And it's interesting because, as we'll talk about later, acai is it's actually the poor man's fruit in Brazil. Now we've turned it into a superfood because of its amazing sort of nutritional properties, but really is the common man's fruit in the Amazon rainforest. Grew up, had the ability to go to the University of Colorado at Boulder to play football, which was a big football program. I probably had very little business being there, to be honest, but I had this kind of strange connection with the coach, and was able to go there as a walk-on, earned a scholarship against all odds, let's just say, and ended up doing really well in college football, which gave me an opportunity to play afterwards. I was signed as a free agent with the Minnesota Vikings, but I always joke that the NFL stands for not for long. So that was a quick experience. But then I had the ability to actually go and play in Italy, which later on helped, that experience helped me with foreign languages. It helped me with, different cultures, and giving you sort of that other perspective of not just being in the US of A. After my Italian football experience, I had been dating I met a Brazilian girl and started dating her, and decided that going to Brazil for the millennium, 1999, 2000 was a great idea. So myself and my co-founder Edmund and my girlfriend Fernanda, we went down to Brazil, not to the Amazon, but to the beaches, Sao Paulo in the north of Brazil. And it was there that I had my first bowl of acai after a surf trip. It's actually true. After a surf, flavor blew me away. I think when you're traveling in foreign countries and you find something that you like, you want to have it over and over again. It's a bit addictive. I was told that that's what the professional athletes, the Brazilian jiu-jitsu fighters, were training with, and the surfers and all that. So I was like, wow, this is like the cool functional food in Brazil. And I was still an athlete, and so I was drawn to that. I went home with this idea, Edmund and I, that like we were gonna, take this product to the United States. found out that it was frozen and that, we could get that done. But I'd already committed to going back to Europe and playing one more season of football. This time was just outside of Paris, France. And again, helped me with culture, helped me with language, which, 10 years later, 20 years later, has really helped SAMBAZON as a business expand into international markets, just because of having this living abroad experience and, speaking my broken French, Italian, Spanish, and pretty good Portuguese now, sort of in all these places around the world. It's really been interesting. People ask me, obviously Açai was already quite popular in Brazil, but for me, I guess I was the gringo, the foreigner that brought it to the United States. And people say, "Oh, how did tell us the story of how you found Açai a little bit or discovered it or something like that." It was quite popular, as I said, in Brazil. So I don't know if I discovered it, but looking back on it all, going to the University of Colorado Boulder, which is a very liberal school, it's all about organics. I mean, not the school itself, but the city Boulder is very, organic friendly. A lot of the natural foods companies come out of Boulder, if you will. I had this sort of half jock, half hippie background with a finance degree and an international sort of flavor to me. And so when I found Açai, so to speak, Açai found me, so to speak, and we sort of came together and started what has been a pretty amazing 23-year experience. And my co-founders, my partners have certainly done much of the heavy lifting, which I sometimes get the credit for. But yeah, that's kind of how it all started. Both with my background and how that led into this journey of SAMBAZON.
You're sort of a precursor for Coach Ted Lasso. It sounds like to Europe and play football.
Love that show. Love that show. Yeah,
it is. I work for the British consulate. The Brits don't like it so much, but the Americans love it.
We love it.
So I mean, my mom remarried, but my mom was a widow with 5 boys when we were very young. And I wonder what it was like for you. How important was that? And do you think your upbringing, finding your purpose, having a single mom raise you and your brother?
I think as you get older and older, you realize like how much of an effect that situation had on you, whether for good or for bad or whatever. On the good side, it taught us my brother and I, to be entrepreneurial at a very young age. It was, hey, here's $5, go find yourself dinner or something like that. And not that was a bad thing. You have, fantastic mother who has just been amazing and still actually works with us here at the company. Does a lot. We didn't have a lot of money, but at the same time, never like missed a meal or anything like that. Taught me the value of money. And so as an entrepreneur, making every dollar count for 2, these sort of things, it really helped me from that perspective. I think also the football, making quick decisions in a high-paced environment sort of thing, and being the team captain, which I was, really also helped with the sort of the leadership. So sort of these combinations of what your family as well as your extracurricular activities really did shape who I am today.
And SAMBAZON as well. Tell us a little bit about it, because you follow the triple bottom line model.
So coming out of Boulder in 1998 and having a couple years of football after that, when Edmund and I started researching into Açai, we found a couple interesting things. One was that, as I mentioned, it has this sort of amazing chemical composition where it doesn't have any sugar in it on its own, and it has 50% lipids, fat. So it's really like a little protein and a bunch of fiber. So it's like it builds your body up. What I also found was, as I mentioned before, that this fruit grew in the wild, in the Amazon rainforest on a 30-foot tall palm tree, and was extremely abundant, right? And it was the local growers, I should call them, because they're not really farming, they're more like managing, that were surviving on this, both from that they could eat it and then they could also sell it, right? And this, by the way, is the same tree that the heart of palm comes from. And so in the 70s and 80s, there was growth in the heart of palm industry, which created the beginnings of the capacitation of this supply chain, if you will. But anyway, so So as we were looking deeper into this product coming from the wild in the Amazon, and thousands and thousands of people, there's about 1 million people in the Amazon rainforest that work in the Açai chain, if you will, either as growers or logistics or whatever. And this is, the poor of the poor, extreme poverty. What we found, what I saw actually was Greenpeace came out that it said that Açai is the most important non-timber forest product in terms of money for the entire Amazon rainforest. And I was like, whoa, right? Like, this is a eco product that, because of its mainstream appeal, flavor, beauty and abundance, could, in fact, if it was done the right way, it could be like the world's first mainstream eco product. Right. It had all the things, because typically what you had was maybe big companies that were trying to go green or eco, and they're like the Titanic trying to turn around, sort of thing, very difficult. Or you had like handicrafts. You did have products in the local communities, but they weren't like big scalable things. And I was like, whoa, this Açai thing, it has the appeal, it has the volume, all of these things. And so I started doing my homework, and reading everything I could get my hands on in terms of sustainable business. Read, Paul Hawken and the Natural Capitalism, and read about Anita Roddick and The Body Shop. Read about Ben and Jerry's, and how maybe their product wasn't an eco or healthy product, but they were social activists, right? And I came upon a term created by, I believe it was the economist John Elkington, if I got that right, called the triple bottom line. And we all know that the bottom line of the company is like the profit line. And if you don't have profit, you don't, and you don't have an ever-ending supply of cash, which no one does, then, your business will fail. So everybody talks about the bottom line. But this economist introduced this idea of a triple bottom line, which not only measured success economically, but it also measured it socially, with the people who are involved and all the stakeholders in the chain, and also environmentally, with obviously the biodiversity of the forest and the air and the water and everything that's sort of included in the environment. So again, as a 25-year-old social entrepreneur, I was fired up to go out and create a triple bottom line company from day one, that would measure our success in all three of these lenses, if you will. And again, as an underdog, undersized, football player, no challenge was great enough for me. So I really thought that making profit is one thing, but making triple bottom line profit is a whole nother thing. And sign me up for that. So we dedicated ourselves from the very beginning, to not only worrying about our own sort of economic profit, but really socially and environmentally. And what does that mean day to day? That means things like, long before we were a profitable company, we were already investing in our in the social and environmental aspects of our business, which finally, when we started making profit, which took us, the better part of a decade, we were proud of that triple bottom line profit, and we felt proud that we didn't cut any corners, exploit any portion of the chain, if you will, in order to be a successful, profitable company. I think that's one of the things we're most proud of.
Can you give us a sense of scale today, how big you are, either on sales or markets you reach or employee population?
We're well over $100 million company, are selling, believe it or not, in 50 different countries around the globe. It's not always about quantity, it's about quality. We have 5 of our own retail locations, which is something that I'm quite excited about expanding to in the future.
And are you using distributors, or do you have a large employee population? How do you what's your staffing like?
In Brazil, the growers that we work with are not our employees. We purchase raw acai berries from them, okay, in a direct model. And we should, I'll touch on that a little bit. And then, the factories are our employees. And as we go up the chain, then of course, here in the United States, 100+ employees in the United States, sales, marketing, operations, finance, And then in some of our own stores we do. And then, as we're starting to license and franchise our stores, those are through partnerships. Taking two steps back, right? Making Açai the world's first mainstream eco product. Now, when we arrived on the scene in, early 2000, what we found was that Açai was a cottage industry that I mentioned kind of came out of the heart of Palm. And it was really these Brazilian jiu-jitsu fighters who I mentioned. And there's a family of them who really are the name in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. It's called the Gracie family. And I always credit them they're the ones who really brought Açai out of the forest. They had family who lived up in the north of Brazil, and they lived down in Rio de Janeiro. And so they brought this product that is consumed at room temperature, I don't know, like applesauce with fish and with meat. They brought it down to Rio de Janeiro, which is kind of like from even further than, say, New York to Miami sort of thing. Probably be New York to Puerto Rico or something, right? Like that kind of distance. They brought it down to Rio de Janeiro, and to bring it down, they had to freeze it, right? So they brought it down to Rio, where it's hot and it's tropical, and then they started making it, putting different concoctions in it, and came up with this like sugar mix with guarana, which is like this caffeine spike, if you will, and created this like functional food. It's like a smoothie in a bowl that you put stuff on it. That's what became an acai bowl. And that was in the 90s, only in the 90s. And so overnight, you went from this cottage industry that was doing heart of palm, which, by the way, when you take the heart of palm, you kill the tree. You got to cut the tree down, to all of a sudden the berries on the tree, the acai berries, are this renewable resource that regenerates every year, and every crop season. And so all of a sudden, this overnight, that there was a gold rush, or a purple gold rush in the Amazon. And so a cottage industry just went through the roof. And so when I showed up in 2000, there was very little quality control. Nobody was pasteurizing the product, as an example. It's coming from the trees to the forest floor into somebody's backyard factory, even, being kind of washed off and then processed and then put in a bag and sent down to Rio de Janeiro. Like the microbiology and things like that wasn't exactly at the standard that you would need to create like a global business or even an exported business, right? Didn't exist. So there didn't really exist any quality control standards or industrial standards with the product, let alone social or environmental standards. They didn't exist, honestly. And in my first year there, what I learned was that the acai comes from the growers on the tree to the guy with the canoe to the guy with the boat, and then it shows up at like a local on the river market, sort of like a swap meet in the concrete or the dirt or whatever. And then there you would have people, processors with stainless steel equipment, who would buy from the market, process, and then sell. And so who they were selling to was me. I showed up and said, who's making acai? Oh, there's some processors here. Okay, let's go talk to a processor. And so I started talking to a processor, and even started buying product from a processor, and actually two processors. And I asked them both the same question separately, which was, what's happening at the farm level with the growers and the communities and the trees and the biodiversity of the forest? And they both gave me the same answer, which was, I have no idea.
Exactly. I was going to say that. No
idea.
Yeah.
And so no traceability, no chain of custody, no nothing. Right. And so again, what I had been learning about was, you want to, I had this belief that we could shape an industry, and we could create standards, and so we could create a chain, but you couldn't do that without traceability in the supply chain, right? It didn't exist, or wasn't possible. And so we took some funds of our own that we normally use for growing or marketing or whatever it might be, and we went and donated to some local NGOs in Brazil, with the help of some bigger NGOs as well. And we brought down organic systems certifiers, and we created the first organic systems plan for acai in the region. And it was directly with the forest growers, communities, and some co-ops.
So you got to know the growers and see what their reality was. And was it just a full spectrum of experiences, or was it largely impoverished people? Was it a monopoly? How was it in reality?
Um, Complete opposite of a monopoly, completely like I guess it would be diversified, right? No, no big agro businesses, of course, nothing at all. Number one. Number two, definitely poverty. But the communities had different needs. Some had healthcare needs, some had educational needs, some had all of the above sort of thing. And we sort of, from that moment in 2002, 2003, started working directly with the forest communities and said to ourselves, we're going to do it a different way. We're going to establish this direct model. And eventually what has happened now, for 20 years now, since we made that move, every single year we get closer with those communities about what their needs are, how to help them, how to support them. And they, in turn, not only get technical assistance, so financial support, training, all kinds of things like that. They also get, which, touched me later on in our journey, they have a sense of pride now that their product is going, and they know where it's going, by the way. They know that it's going into SAMBAZON's, supply chain and ending up in the supermarket at Whole Foods or wherever it might be, right? Whereas before, they would put it on their dock, they would sell it to the next guy in the chain, which maybe the next guy in the chain with the boat, maybe he's offering a good price, maybe he's offering a bad price, maybe it's a take it or leave it, right? So there's this opportunity for exploitation through all this middleman. So we came in, and after our organic systems certification plan, we then brought in fair trade systems and established fair trade certification. So we were not only addressing the environmental aspects of the supply chain, but we're also addressing the social aspects of the supply chain, minimum wages, things like that. And so from, at the time, again, 2002, 2003, at that time I was 26, 27, whatever, we didn't have factories or anything in Brazil. But a year later, we decided that that was the right move for us. And so we built our own manufacturing plant. And so, we always tell our customers that since 2005, then, the product goes from the forest growers to us to you. And there's nobody else in between. And as you know, Toby, with anything you do it every day, every week, every month, every year, you get better at it. 20-year overnight success in Açai supply chain management and triple bottom line success, if you will.
Ladies and gentlemen, again today on the Caring Economy, we have Ryan Black with us. He's the Chief Executive Officer of SAMBAZON, which is an acronym for the Sustainable Management of the Brazilian Amazon, a company which he co-founded in 2000 with his brother and friend. Ryan, can you say, Brazil gets somewhat deservedly, I think, a bad rap for many things, governance issues, political issues, exploitation of the Amazon, certainly rainforest. How do you stay afloat? How do you deal with, I'm sure you've seen a lot of the underbelly of Brazil, as well as the good in the people. How do you keep that all going?
It's a good question. How do you just do it, man. You just do it. You keep it all going. We've been very blessed to have great partners and mentors in Brazil. People that we've hired and we've found and have found us that have really kept our feet on the ground, with head in the clouds but feet on the ground, and protected us in a whole gauntlet of issues that have come up over the years of building a business in Brazil, from tax and financial issues to environmental issues to crime and all of the things that come along with doing business in foreign countries and in the third world. I can say that the thing that I fell in love with the most when I went to Brazil the first time actually was not Açai. It was Brazil and Brazil's people and Brazil's spirit and the vibration, if you will, the vibe of the positivity that was coming out of this culture, that didn't matter if the person, if a person was poor or didn't have much to put together. they have this, there's a word for it in Portuguese. It's called alegria, and it means joy, you know, and the Brazilian culture has such a joy to them that if it didn't, it would be a very different scenario, right?
Yeah.
But that joy, that positivity, and alegria is something that has overshadowed every challenge or issue that we've had. I mean, that's the fact, and we have been, you know, honestly honored and proud to represent Brazil in this way, and and Brazilians, both in Brazil and around the world, they're very let's just say proud and nostalgic of SAMBAZON, because we're trying our very best to do it the right way, you know, and to not cut any corners, and support the people and support the environment, and be really good news for Brazil, you know, out of Brazil, in a time when, you know, there's, you know, you hear a lot about if it's corruption or the Amazon or you know, those sort of things. Brazil always talks about two things. One, they always say Brazil is the country of the future, you know, and it is in so many ways. I think the youth of Brazil is really turned on, like from an eco standpoint, you know, nature. And they also have a saying that says Deus é brasileiro, which means God is Brazilian, you know, and it's in some ways it's true. If you ever get to visit Brazil, you know what I mean. There's just beauty in every direction that you look.
Yeah, there's pride. I've only been there once, but as you say, very proud people and a beautiful people. So when you go out to the rest of the world, I'm imagining as a global business, I'm going to guess that Europe is probably the strictest and hardest to import export with, or is it the US, or what sort of lessons have you gleaned there in terms of running a global business?
You know, lucky for me, Açai is a frozen product, and it is like for us, and it's, you know, it's organic certified in our case, and so importation of that product in, you know, into the United States or even into Europe is really easy, to be honest. There are certain countries that are extremely, you know, difficult, probably not to throw them under the bus, but the hardest one has been Indonesia. Probably a 5-year process with the equivalent of the FDA to actually import goods, and you know, you're tied to who you import it with for eternity, or you know, those sort of things. So yeah, that hasn't been too difficult in our you know, journey in terms of like importation or regulation. What has definitely been harder is you know, teaching somebody about a product that they've never heard of, that they can barely pronounce, you know, acai, it's acai, it's acai, it's acai, it's, you know, it's all those things. I actually saw, it's funny, on the news here in California a couple months ago, there was this thing that said like the most mispronounced words in America. Number one was acai, you know. So I'm excited that it's made it to the mainstream level. But you know, that has been more difficult, dealing with a wild harvested fruit, which is highly perishable, which grows at the top of a big tree. That's been much more difficult than getting it across the borders.
Yeah. I'm sure you own a couple of TikTok channels. It's a great place to explore. I'm mindful of our time. I want to ask you one thing tangential to the business, which is the 501c3 that you started. It's threaty.org. Is that how you say it?
The tree. Yeah, the tree.
The tree.
Yeah, the tree. The tree is a group that started over a decade ago, and when I found that myself and some of our natural foods partners and brothers and sisters, really, companies, we were doing a lot together, and we figured that we could actually be even more consumer facing together. And so we started pre-COVID, we started doing events together, you know, homeless outreach together, environmental habitat restorations and beach cleanups and things like that. And then we started working on a few different other projects, but COVID kind of killed some of that, which is very difficult, honestly. And so we pivoted a bit into creating a consumer app, because, you know, a lot of the world, but certainly the youth, is on their phone. So we've been working on developing a consumer app that people can, you know, vote with their dollars, you know, sort of, you know, if you're on the platform, you can participate and get points that lead to different prizes from the companies and things like that. But it's still it's still a bit of a ways away in terms of the development. But it's been a great experience, and I hope that as time goes on, I get to share that with more people.
Okay. And people can check it out at thetri.org, thetree.org, right?
That's right.
Two last questions. One is, I know you're a surfer. It sounds like lifelong surfer. What is it about surfing that is your sort of joy?
Surfing. Yeah, surfing's amazing. There's a saying that says only a surfer knows the feeling. And it's just one of these things. And maybe when you're hauling butt down a ski hill or something like that, it's almost like that. But being on a surfboard on your feet with the power of the wave behind you is a very amazing connection with nature. It just is. And going out and being in the sunshine, and typically sunshine, it's a much better experience when the water's warm and the sun is shining. Being out there with your friends, having fun surfing, not to mention sort of the just the time away from the day-to-day, if you will. It's a really sort of meditative experience. And there's also like there's no bad days in surfing. I mean, maybe if you break your board in half, but that doesn't happen very often. I mean, I actually went surfing yesterday or 2 days ago with a friend, and the water was freezing here in Southern California, and the waves were tiny. But I tell you what, you get out of the water, you're feeling fresh, it's clean, it's beautiful, and it just starts your day off in a way that almost nothing else can. And I think that's why it's becoming more and more popular. They also have a saying that says the best surfer is the one who's having the most fun. So it's like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're some like big wave ripper pro or something like that. None of that matters. It's just a great opportunity to go out and be in nature.
Yeah, I've only tried it a couple of times, but I like the culture around it, and I have heroes. I'm sure you do, like Yvon Chouinard, who was a surfer. So
absolutely.
So last question, my friend Ryan Black. What pearls of wisdom might you give to people who are trying to either start their career or mid-career, later career, about finding that either purpose-driven brand or purpose-driven career path?
One is, there's a saying, I guess I'm big on sayings. There's a saying that says the passion is in the risk. And I've found that in my life that when you go out and try new things that might be risky, that you get that reward, you get that satisfaction in it. And if that's your personality, if that's not your personality, it's tough to be an entrepreneur, I think. But if that's your personality and you want to go for it, then just do it. My football coach used to say, we make mistakes at full speed. And it's interesting. So be bold, be bold. And I think I read once that experience comes from or learning comes from experience and from mistakes. And so I knew that I had no experience in my business. And so I went out there and started making mistakes, because you make mistakes and you learn. They always say you learn more from your mistakes than your whatever. And so getting out there and making mistakes and doing it at full speed, which means that you go out there today and you make 3 mistakes by noon, right? You just learned a bunch, as opposed to kind of sitting back and being like, indecision, what should I do? That I'll make me personally, I'll make 3 mistakes before breakfast, and learn and all that. So that's one
that's very helpful.
Let's just say pearl of wisdom. People always say do what you love, and then you'll never feel like you're working a day.
That's easier to say sometimes than to do when one is really young, but I appreciate your pearls of wisdom. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank Ryan Black for being with us today. He's the CEO and co-founder of SAMBAZON. They have basically brought the superfood Açai to the United States and the rest of the world. So Ryan, thank you, and come back.
Thanks, Toby.